This short video is to go through the sections of the Heritage Living Trust, the benefits of each section, and for you, the agent, to think of people specifically who you know that could benefit by a Heritage Living Trust. I'm at the Heritage Agent website, which is heritageagent.com. It's a website for agents only. I'm clicking on the HLT Benefits tab. First, know that not all living trusts are created equally, and that is the truth. The husband and wife trust for Heritage Living Trust is over 190 pages. That's an AB trust. It's very substantial. And these are the different sections in the trust. The first is the abstract. This allows you to show the existence of the trust without having disclosed to bank and other asset holders what's included in your trust. What I would ask my prospective clients is, if you had a choice of making your estate public or keeping it private, which would you choose? And the answer 100% of the time is, I would keep it private. That's right. And that's why a trust might be a good thing for you, because unlike going through probate, which is a public proceeding, your living trust and what's included and who gets what is completely private. There is no court involvement, no attorney involvement once you pass. So a living trust might be good for you if you value privacy. The second section of the living trust is the legalese. The law says if you have an asset that is probatable and has been funded, named and changed into the name of the trust, then that asset shall bypass probate. So you don't have to pay a local attorney to go through probate. You don't have to have the time or the expense of probate. What is probate? Probate is just simply a procedure where the court does an inventory of your assets, publishes them, a notice if you have any claim against the estate. If the estate owes you money, you come forward, and probate takes an average of anywhere between 6 months to 3 years. Okay, so if you want to avoid the costs and the expense of probate, then a living trust is something you might be interested in. The schedule of the trust, this section shows your legal intent to transfer your assets. It's basically a way of you keeping an inventory of your estate and if you funded that asset or not. And also when you pass, your successor trustee can go down the list and make sure those assets are going to be transferred into the names of the people that are your beneficiaries. Personal property transfers. Who's going to get that wedding ring? Who's going to get the Rolex? Who's going to get that artwork on the wall? Who's going to get something which has absolutely no monetary value but has a huge financial value to somebody? There are things in your home that your loved one, your children most particularly, have a value of, that they have an emotional attachment to. So what I would recommend for your clients is, when your children are of adult age, you go through your home, you take an inventory with your children and ask them who would like what when you pass, so that there's no fighting about it. We don't want hard feelings. We want to do the best we can and be fair to our children, and this goes a long way to doing that. Amendments to the trust. Your living trust is a living document, and changes will be made through the lifetime of your trust. Changes such as you might add a beneficiary. You might go disinherit somebody. You might buy a second home, a third home. You might move out of state. Things change in our lifetime, and your trust changes with you. As long as the trust is still valid, then you'll get free lifetime changes and free lifetime support. And what I mean by valid is, if you have a husband and wife that have an AB trust and they get divorced, then that trust is no longer valid because they no longer have a legal marriage. They would each need to get their own trust. If they have an AB trust and the one spouse passes, then obviously that trust is still valid to the death of the second spouse. Okay, so as long as the trust is valid, the Heritage will provide free lifetime changes and free lifetime support. If they went to a local attorney anywhere else, they would have to pay for each of those changes, each of those consultations, which will run into the thousands of dollars. Asset power of attorney. If you're hospitalized and your bills keep coming, someone has to pay them, obviously. So the asset power of attorney is a person that you're going to name to pay those bills. If you're incapacitated and your spouse has passed, your spouse will pay those bills if their spouse is still alive. Pour over will. What happens if you somehow do not fund an asset into your trust that needs to be probated? Well, the bad news is it will go through probate. The good news is that it will be distributed per your wishes of your trust. So if you had a trust with 2 children, they each were receiving 50% of your estate. They would each receive 50% after the asset went through probate. That is why the asset organizer is so important, and that your client give complete disclosure of his estate so Heritage can help them fund their entire estate. The living will is also known as a health directive. What I would say to clients is, if something happened to you and you were in a hospital and someone came up and said, we need to go ahead and take them off of life support, would you like to leave that decision up to your loved ones, or would you rather make that decision today when you were mentally able to make that decision on behalf of them? 100% of the time people say, I want to make those decisions. And exactly what you can do with your Heritage Living Trust, because it includes a living will healthcare directive, so you don't have to leave these difficult decisions to your loved ones. Durable healthcare, power attorney for healthcare. You're in a hospital, you're in a coma, you made a decision, you're still on life support and you're living. They're going to ask this person or persons who you've named for approval to do a procedure. Okay? Next one is conservator. Let's say you get dementia or Alzheimer's, or you're incapacitated and you need to put into a care facility. This person or persons will make the decisions on behalf of you and have access to your estate to pay for this care when you're unable to make those decisions yourself. And now with people living longer and the occurrences of dementia and Alzheimer's increasing, conservator is more important than ever. And if you don't name a conservator in your trust, then you'll have to go to court. And the court many times will name a conservator for you, and you're going to have to report to the court each year. By nominating your conservator in your Heritage Living Trust, you bypass the court completely. Who do you know that has minor children and doesn't have a trust? What would happen to their children if the husband and wife were both to pass in the same car accident? Well, who would raise those children? Wouldn't you think as a parent you would want to make that decision? When my wife and I got our Heritage Living Trust, our daughters were young, and that was the #1 reason I got a trust. My biggest fear was, not any longer, because they're adults, is that something happened to my wife and I, who would raise our children, because we knew exactly who we wanted, and we knew exactly in the manner in which we wanted to raise them. So who do you know that has minor children that does not have a living trust? Who do you know that has a special needs child? If I had a special needs child, the #1 concern to me would be what's going to happen to my child when I pass. The special needs provision allows the special needs child to continue to receive their state and federal assistance after the parents have died through a provision in their trust which allows them to receive assets from the estate without putting their state and federal assistance at risk. It's a huge thing. Burial instructions. If you've ever had anyone close to you die and the person who died did not make any kind of preparations, then you've probably seen people argue about what kind of ceremony should be held, how much money should have been spent on this thing, where the person should be buried or cremated. Take that out of the equation. Even if you don't have these decisions made, write down what your wishes are so there's no fighting within your family. When my father died, he donated his body and his certain organs, and in his trust was the facility which he already made arrangements with. So hours after my father had died, I had called them up, and they came and took care of that for me. And then we got a beautiful letter in the mail. It's a completely personal choice. There are religions that are completely against this. Be very compassionate with your clients. Whatever they decide is the best decision. So if they decide to use this or not, at least the family knows. Last instructions to your family. A lot of times you're going to hear people with, say, 5 children say, should we leave each of our child 20% of our estate? Well, life isn't fair. So you might have some children that are very successful financially, so you might want to leave them more than the other child. And you might want to leave them a note here or tell them before you die that you're doing that. It's not because you don't love them. It's because they need the money. Okay? So it's a great thing to do. And then at the back of your living trust is a section where you put in your important documents, your life insurance policies, etc., etc., etc. The reason this is important is I have seen firsthand people that have passed and their spouse not even knowing if their husband had a life insurance policy. So it's helter-skelter and it's frightening. Not only that, is that you work so hard to accumulate assets in your lifetime to build your estate so that when the time comes, you don't have to depend on your family, number one, financially, and number two, when you do die, if there's anything left over, they can have that and improve their life. And knowing that everything is completely spelled out in your trust, that if you were to die tomorrow, you would know and have the peace of mind that everyone is going to get everything that you have accumulated in your life and not have any doubt in that. Okay, and then finally, there's a successor trustee instructions, how to settle the trust. If your clients who have passed, their children are going to be the trustees to settle the trust, they can call Heritage, and Heritage will walk them through that. So when you think about the benefits of a trust, it's not just probate. People always say probate, probate, probate. No, there's a lot of benefits here. And what I always would say, and I was trained years ago, is the secret to success is offering everybody everything 100% of the time. So get the information to your clients and let them make a decision for themselves, and let them decide if a Heritage Living Trust makes the most sense for them or not.